Justice Department indicted 2 Iranian nationals on charges of planning the assassination of the Saudi ambassador to the U.S. 2 House Homeland Security subcommittees looked into the allegations and other Iranian covert operations. Members heard testimony from retired General Jack Keane, who was partly responsible for developing the Iraq surge strategy in the Bush administration. Also testifying, former CIA Middle East specialist Tim Garrity. He was commander in Beirut during the 1983 attack, which killed 241 U.S. Marines. This is 2 hours, 45 minutes.
Oversight Subcommittee and the Intelligence Subcommittee. We're meeting today to hear testimony regarding the Iranian terror operations on American soil. The Iranian government is a threat to the international community, building weapons of mass destruction. It is a threat to the Middle East, dominating the region through intimidation and support to terrorist organizations. And now recent reports indicate that the Iranian government is a threat to the homeland security by attempting to assassinate the Saudi ambassador on our soil using drug cartels operating on our doorstep. Enough is enough. Our message to Iran should be simple. Continue threatening the national security of the United States, and there will be a punitive response. In February, the International Atomic Agency director agreed that Iranian leaders seem very determined to build a nuclear weapon. Additionally, Iran has declared it has successfully enriched uranium. The U.S. Department of State considers Iran the world's most active state sponsor of terrorism. Since its inception in 1979, the Islamic State has used terrorism as an integral part of its foreign and military policies. It provides funding, weapons, training, and sanctuary to numerous terrorist groups, most notably those operating in Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon, and other Middle Eastern countries. Iranian-backed political violence has killed more than 1,000 people in over 200 terror attacks, including the 1983 suicide bombing of American and French military barracks in Beirut, killing 299 people. We should be concerned about a nexus between Iran, Hezbollah, and the drug cartels. This plot indicates a dangerous escalation of the Iranian government's role in the sponsorship of terrorism. Remember that World War I started because of an assassination of a foreign diplomat. The Iranian government has established strong ties to Latin America. Presidents Ahmadinejad and Chavez are allies. Strict sanctions on the Central Bank of Iran must be enforced sooner rather than later. If it turns out that this Iranian assassination plot on U.S. soil was sanctioned at the highest levels of the Iranian government, then I believe military force should not be taken off the table.
Today's hearings address a critical homeland security issue, Iran's terror operations on American soil. In my view, this is a game changer and represents a crossing of the red line by Iran. The complaint unsealed in New York on October 11th has ramifications that are significant for homeland security in the United States. The focus since 9/11 has rightly been on al-Qaeda and affiliated terrorist groups. Debate about Iran's intent and capability to strike on American soil has been limited to the nuclear issue. That must change, and I hope today's hearing is a constructive contribution to the debate. While the United States and the international community has issued sanctions against Iran in some form since 1979, it's obvious from the assassination attempt that Iran has not been deterred. Some have theorized that such an attempt might actually signal some amount of desperation and dissension within Iran, particularly as it relates to the relationship between Ahmadinejad and the ruling theocracy. What are the implications of that? I do believe, regardless, that it's important for the United States to get serious, sanction the Iranian central bank, its oil refinery businesses, its shipping companies, and its port operations. While Iran assassinating a foreign ambassador in Washington, D.C. is a significant provocation, it's not a plot considered in isolation. Iran is on a path toward obtaining a nuclear weapon. We cannot allow that to happen.
For holding today's hearing, this is a vital issue, and I think it's very appropriate that the 2 subcommittees came together to hold this hearing. Much reference has been made this morning to the recent indictment and the allegations regarding the plot against the United States by Iran or by elements within Iran. I've seen much of the evidence, both from this committee and the Intelligence Committee, and the totality of the evidence makes it clear that this was a real plot. All of the various types of evidence confirms how real it was, and this, to me, is, as Chairman Meehan said, a game changer. This takes it to a new level, Iran's actions against the United States, but to actually be contemplating what would have been an active war against the United States. Number one, killing a foreign ambassador on American soil in our nation's capital, but also clear from the statements that were made that there was a willingness to kill hundreds of Americans along with that. So you have the assassination of a foreign ambassador, you have the willingness to kill hundreds of Americans. This is an act of war. And so we have to, I don't think we can just do business as usual or even carry on sanctions as usual. And I think the sanctions have been somewhat effective in the past, but because of this red line that was crossed, that was jumped across, I believe further action is needed to make it clear how strongly we feel about this, and also not just to send a message to Iran, but also send a message to other nations in the region about how seriously we feel. I think, for instance, we should expel Iranian officials, both in New York at the UN and also here in Washington. Many of them are working as spies. In New York, we had a particular experience of people out of the Iranian office at the UN in the United States actually doing reconnaissance on the New York City subway system. They were expelled from the country. We know from, I believe, it's fairly clear, of a number of representatives of the Quds Force who would be involved in Washington and also in New York. So I think that is a clear signal and a clear action that should be taken now. And also, as Chairman McCall said, I think it's essential that we begin to enforce sanctions against Iran's central bank. These would send clear signals, and also I think it's important to say that nothing should be taken off the table.
The Iranian bungled operation to use proxies to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States and to purposely plan the operation inside the United States is a stunning rebuke to the Obama administration's policy of negotiation and isolation with the Iranians. Indeed, Republican and Democratic administrations since 1980 have failed to deal effectively with the harsh reality that Iran is our #1 strategic enemy in the world. The action arm for Iran's state sponsorship of terrorism outside of their borders is led by General Qasem Soleimani, who has been in charge for over 15 years. General Soleimani has no military or political boss. He answers to only one person, the supreme leader in Iran, Khomeini. We must conclude that for General Soleimani to plan an operation inside the United States that would result in Americans being killed, surely the supreme leader at a minimum approved the plan and may in fact direct it. All that said, it is time to review our strategy for Iran. First and foremost, begin to treat Iran as the strategic enemy they truly are, and as such, develop a strategic competitive framework that counters every major interest the Iranian regime engages in. As an example, seize the financial assets which are outside of Iran, much as we did with the al-Qaeda. Limit their ability to trade by denying their ships entry to ports around the world. Limit the ability of their central bank to operate effectively.
And I think you mentioned we need to treat Iran as a strategic enemy. I agree with that. And so to both the General and the Colonel, what do you think should be the proper response to deal with Iran?
Well, as I said in my remarks, that step one is to recognize them as our strategic enemy and therefore use all the elements of national power as such to push against that enemy. So I'm suggesting that we get comprehensive and holistic about what we're doing. I'm not suggesting for a minute that we start with some small things and then lead up to larger things. I'm saying we put our hand around their throat right now in every interest that they have. Why are we permitting the Quds Force leaders, who have been organizing this killing of us for 30 years, to go around still walking around. Why don't we kill them? We kill other people who are running terrorist organizations against the United States. These guys have killed almost 1,000 of us. Why don't we kill them?